Hello, Anna. Um,
Hi.
thank you for coming on today. Firstly, I want to talk about empowering women. You're a content creator. You have a vision. What does empowering women mean to you? Uh, why did you create this? Who is it for?
Okay. I'll start with why I created it and then go from there. So I kind of had like a mental breakdown with just so much going on. Besides the pandemic, a lot of people have been dealing with mental health issues due to the pandemic. But my like over time, my husband passed away. Then I went to work, full time student, kid, changes. It's been completely chaotic. I lost a best friend and I lost my grandma who I was really close to. And so over time, it kind of just felt like mental health was really not something that was talked about. I mean, people talk about it, but I feel like we try to hide it and we start to isolate ourselves. And so I had like this huge mental breakdown where it felt like I was like alone. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I had great support, but it honestly felt like no one understood me. Like I was just alone. And so I was desperately seeking for help and like finding others who had similar stories to mine. I mean, not similar because everybody's story is different, but I just have like that support system that if you need something or you want that support, you have it there. Sometimes just knowing what, who, just knowing who that's suffering with you, you feel a little bit better. Like that sounds horrible, but it's real. It's real. Like I'm not gonna try to pretend like life is butterflies and all that. Like you see social media and you only see the good side of people. You don't see what's behind closed doors. So when I hit that really rock bottom after the pandemic hit, I was just like, I can't do this. Like, I need help. And so I was seeking help, but it just wasn't enough. And that's when I decided to create Empowering Women. And when I started, I honestly did not know how I was going to do, like, how it would turn out. But I wanted to share my story and I wanted others to talk about these uncomfortable subjects like death, like mental health, sexual abuse, and not try to paint a picture that we see on social media. And so that's and it's mostly for women, but at the same time, I see that a lot of men are out there also supporting me and spreading the word and helping me out. And even some guys said, like, hey, can I talk about someone? I was like, yeah, of course. Like, if there's a woman out there you want to talk about, then please do. Like, if you want to share their story, from your eyes, like your perspective, like, please do. So, yeah, that's kind of the audience that I'm targeting.
Well, I mean, what you're doing is fantastic. I really like your message and what you bring, to other people, trying to inspire through your story, but also allow other people to share theirs. Like you said, mental health is in our culture. We don't really talk about it that much. Only within the last maybe couple years, we've started to really, as a society, talk about it a little bit more. But it's something, especially in the Latino culture, you don't talk about it. No one goes to therapy. We have how many family members I have that you need to go to therapy. No one, I don't know any of my family members that have went to therapy. And it's nothing against them or anything like that. It's just like the culture we're kind of raised in, the area we come from. It's not seen as a necessity compared to like medical or vision or dental like that. But our mental health is very vital, and especially it takes a toll on everyone, especially people that have been through a lot of trauma. Someone like yourself, someone that has to start their life over, raise their kids, find a career, and do it all in their 20s, and get up every day and go back, put a little smile on, and get yourself through that door and keep on going, even when the days are probably really rough. And I can't imagine what you ever went through. And I can't sit here and say, I know that feeling. But I've worked with people in the past that dealt with a lot of trauma. And just listening to their stories, I realized it's not about what you could offer them. It's about listening to what they have to say.
Oh, yeah.
That's basically where it's at. And I think that's what you're trying to do with empowering women is listen so they
Oh,
have a voice.
and that's the thing, like, being, from being Latina, from this culture, like you had mentioned, it's not seen, it's almost as, and not just in Latina community, just in whole as a Western culture, mental health is just don't talk about it. We it's not okay to take medication. It's not okay to go to therapy. We come so, like, I don't want to say fake, but that's as much as I could put it. Like, you paint a picture of what it's like and you just go. You don't deal with it and you just kind of keep it to yourself. It's almost a shameful thing. Like, when I was diagnosed with depression, I was honestly like just was refusing to accept that what was going on with me. And that's the thing. It's like, you don't want to talk about it. You're ashamed that you're having suicidal thoughts, or that you're bipolar or have schizophrenia going on. Like, it's kind of hard. And especially as a Latina, I noticed that when I lost my husband, everybody just kind of expected me to stay put and grieve and cry. But yet, when I wanted to, they're like, no, you can't do that. You have to get up and move. So it's like, well, what do you want me to do? Society tells you, like, go ahead and grieve, but then don't grieve. Like, you can't. And then people are so uncomfortable. Like, they're they're comfortable to talk about mental health, depression, um, grieving. And grieving comes in different forms. And that's the thing, like, depression comes in different forms, but we don't know that until we start talking about it. And sometimes really all you need to do is listen. And that's what I realized. Like, if I could just sit there and talk to somebody who could just listen to me, then it's like, I know they don't understand, and I know that they would never understand, but they're listening to me. They, it's all about being a good listener, really.
Yeah, and I think what the content you produce on your Instagram page with empowering women, you're doing that. You're giving these women a voice, who are also the men that called in as well. You're giving them a voice for those that might feel voiceless. And that's one of the greatest things that you can do for someone is lifting them up in ways that instead of telling them, oh, you can't, you got to keep moving, you got to do this and that. And in the wrong ways, like maybe people were doing for you, they might have thought they're doing the best for you because they didn't want to see you sad and they don't want to see you in a rut or become depressed. And that's the only thing that they could think that would work for you. But they don't realize maybe just listen to what you got to say. And maybe what their idea of getting over a situation might not be healthy for you. It might not be healthy for other people around you because you still had a child that you had to take care of and you still had a life to live. But trying to find, what the meaning of life was again. At how old are you when you got diagnosed with depression, if you don't mind me asking?
It was actually a few months ago. I had originally got diagnosed with anxiety during the time that my husband was going through treatment
Mm,
back in 2014. But then here in, what was it? I want to say it was around April, the beginning of this year. There's
mhm.
like, oh, I was diagnosed with depression, but I was just completely in denial. I'm like, no, but I don't feel hopeless. I have hope. I'm not sad all the time. And I was just completely refusing to accept that I had depression. But the thing was is that I just didn't know that there was different forms of depression.
That's it too. People don't realize that there's layers to everything. And when we grow up, I didn't know the 5 stages of grief. I didn't know that was a thing. Maybe that would have helped us better deal with situations in life. I'm not saying we deal with the same type of grief, um, but everyone goes through loss of life, uh, and we all deal with it differently. I know personally, I have issues with that myself. I bottle a lot of things in. I never visit the graves of my uncle and my aunt, but they're buried in Kerman, the little small suburb of Fresno. And I drive by that cemetery every time I go visit my family, and I still have to this day. And it's been years, it's been like 6 years, and I can't get myself to go. And I don't know if that's denial, but it's just for me not wanting to get in touch with my emotions because it's personal. Even though I help other people that deal with trauma on for the type of work I do, I don't like dealing with it myself, and I don't like to go there. And so, even though people might be helping, um, everyone needs help in their own way as well. And so, what you're doing, I see you might be lending a hand to someone that doesn't know or may think that they might think everything's okay and realize that it doesn't have to be okay. It's okay to be sad sometimes. It's okay to be out. It's okay to feel down. That's where people need to.
It's
That's
out if you
okay.
out. Like, if you wanna have a mental breakdown, please do, we need them. We need to cry, we need to be a mess. I don't want, like, when we're helping others, it's like, I don't want them to think that, "Oh, I have my shit together," because I don't. Oh, I'm sorry. Is it cool? I cuss?
Nah, it's all good. It's all good.
I was like, I don't have my shit together, and I don't want people to think like, "Oh my god, she has her," like, look, I look like a mess. This week has been terrible for me, but I don't have it together, and I want people to know that, you know, just because from the outside it looks like we have it together, it does not mean we're okay. It does not mean we have our shit together. Like, we could be falling apart and we look great. And it's crazy because I want to go back to what you mentioned over the whole graveside, if that's okay, with
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
feeling with our emotions. And I could relate to this because I've only visited my husband's gravesite twice. And that's horrible. In the last 4 years, I've only gone there twice because I cannot get myself to go. And I get it, like, it's like I want to help others, but at the same time, I that doesn't mean I want to revisit these terrible, trauma moments that happened. It's like I want to deal with it, but at the same time, you can't help that mechanism of your brain telling you, hey, I'm trying to protect you, don't go. Like, there's that part too that I feel like people don't understand, that happens in our bodies, where it's not that we don't want to deal with things, but sometimes our own body, our own mind is protecting ourselves from that trauma. And we should not feel guilty over that. And I think that's a hard part over being going through trauma, is feeling guilty over moving on.
That's a big one. Feeling the guilt, the shame, everything that comes with it. And it's okay. It's okay if you don't go visit. I know that it sounds probably horrible for on the outside, but you're trying to protect your mental health and your well-being as well. You can't be in a state of disarray all the time. You have to be able to get to that point of your life where you're going to be okay. And it might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen next week. It might not even happen next year. That's something that you have to build over time. You're very young. You went through a tragedy at a very young age. I don't know if you mind talking about what
I
you
don't mind.
went through. How old were you when this happened, or when you started going through this?
So I we got married back in 2013, mm, Andrew and I. So that was, I think it was like April. I have terrible memory, but back in 2013. And then we had our child at the end of the year of 2013 in like August. So by the following year, 2014, I think it was like March, he was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. And that's a childhood disease that is not often or hardly ever seen in an adult. And we knew, or at least I knew right away, that his prognosis was not going to be good. And yeah, it was, since then, it's just been a complete roller coaster. My life changed, was turned upside down. It, yeah, I don't even know where to begin.
That's the thing. I mean, 2013. How old were you at the time when you got married?
I was 19 when I got married.
So you're 19 years old. You're going through this big life change, and then this gets put out, and you're having to deal with it. You're barely about to get into your 20s, and this is supposed to be, a big step for a lot of people in their life, and it is. And you're trying to balance life, marriage, and family all at one time and deal with it. And you are you are trying to mature at that time, because your maturity level from where you're at now to where you were back then is night and day. You know, you think you have it figured out at that time, and you realize you don't know nothing, and you had to grow up really fast. It seems like,
Oh
and
yeah.
having to deal with all that, I can't imagine what type of mental state you were in that time, and having this play out for a long time,
Oh yeah.
and
The thing
getting
is
to
that
that point.
the being a first time mom, like when the first child you have is it's really hard as a female because your hormones are just everywhere. You're emotional about everything. You start crying for no goddamn reason. Like it's just you're a mess for three months. I remember I was just a complete mess. So it was just like trying to adapt to being a first time mom, and then you have everybody telling you what to do, and you're just like, leave me alone, let me be. And then right because I think my daughter was 6 months when her dad got diagnosed, when Andrew got diagnosed. So it was just like within the first 6 months of being a brand new mom, being married, then that happened. And so it was just, oh man, insane.
And that, having to deal with that, right? Having to be able to be having to um, grow up at that time. Essentially, you're faced with a situation where I got to grow up out of um, have a lot of stress. You had a lot of stress you had to deal with, but you also had a lot of responsibility at that point in time, and having to deal with your husband's illness and having to raise your first child. How long did that play out for? How long did that him being in that serious illness before he passed away?
It was a good, let's see, 2 years, 2 years and a half, almost three, of just intense medical crap going on. Um, it went from like he got a bone marrow transplant within like the first 3 months of being diagnosed. So pretty quickly he was able to find a donor, got the transplant, but just because he had chemo, radiation, and a transplant didn't mean everything was better. That was just like opening the door to this whole new series of um, crazy up and downs in medical attention. I mean, we were in the hospital for months at a time in a small room in an isolation. Like what's going on now with the pandemic, that was my life in like 10 times heightened every day for like 2.5 years of wear a mask. And it wasn't just a cloth mask, like it was like the legit big mask things with the filters and having to scrub in and out in order to go see him. And then, you know, him not being there. So it was just I had to put in the role of not only being I was like the head of the family. I needed to be in charge. He couldn't be there for me, so I needed to be there for him. Be there for my daughter. I was a full-time student online and I had to commute back and forth from the little place we were staying at. So it was I had no choice. I had to do this for the sake of surviving myself, my kid, and her dad.
That's a lot. And he was out here in the Bay Area, right, for medical.
He was,
And
over at Stanford.
so you're at Stanford, and you're traveling from the Fresno area and having to commute and do that's it's a lot of challenge that was put on you. But you came to the call and you did that. You were the one that did that. And you went through a lot. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what that feeling's like, and how you overcome that and still be strong, and still stand up today, wake up and still waking up, and facing life's challenges as they go on. That's what's empowering, and that's what I think that you're channeling in the content that you're trying to put out for other people, to realize that life could take you down the deepest, darkest past, but being able to come back out and face reality again, and face, you know, understand that there's still a lot to life, and that you're able to be someone, be loved, and get back on your feet. And that's what,
Yeah.
you've overcome those challenges. I'm not saying they're over, but you're going down that right path, and coming back out of it now, it's so it doesn't seem like that was too long ago. You know,
Oh,
that's
but
it's not that long ago, and now you're faced with new challenges with COVID. You're faced with. Are you still in school currently?
yeah, I am. I'm still a full-time student and I'm a full-time employee too.
So
So
you're doing full time. Oh, that's I
yeah.
know that I could relate to big time. I know what it's like to work full time and go to school full time. It's not easy at all. It's not. Are you okay doing that? Are you be able to maintain your grades?
So this past week was the first week of me being a full-time employee and doing school at the same time. Um, so I mean, I'm going to Fresno Pacific and it's just amazing because my professors have been great so far. Like all of them are just so understanding and it sounds I don't know if I should be saying this, but it's like I've turned in homework late and they've given me full credit. And so that honestly and that's something else that there's a few um something I've had to learn that over this whole thing, it's like reaching out for help, which I think is the hardest thing. Reaching out for help from others from your community and expressing, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm dealing with. I need help. And it's actually pretty amazing to see how many people out there are really willing to help you get through whatever it is that you're dealing with. And sometimes it feels like everybody's against you, and sometimes it feels like the world is against you. But just reaching out to others, like it's it's really what has gotten me through a lot of moments when it felt like I just couldn't anymore.
Was it hard for you to reach out for help in the beginning?
It was so fucking hard. Like I mean, as a Latina, we're like as Latinos, we're just like, hey, no, we got this. Like, I don't need anyone's help. I could do this. Like, screw this. I don't need your help. I don't need your help. I'm good. No, it was the hardest thing I have ever had to overcome is being like, hey, I need help. And that that in itself is like a whole other it's a whole other story.
Well, I know the Latino culture. Like, if you try to reach out to family, sometimes they don't take it serious, and they just clown on you, or that's just their form of help and their form of communication. And I know not every family is like that, but I understand sometimes it's really hard to go uh, to family for that type of help, and you have to seek outside help from other people, maybe professional or doing what you're doing now, uh, through other people with trauma, with extraordinary stories that are able to form a community to branch out and lend that help to other people that might not otherwise receive it, because not everyone has the family support. Not everyone's able to go see or seek therapy, and not everyone's able to talk with their significant others
Oh, no,
in
and
situations.
like, I wanna put, like, just the perspective of how it is, because I think when we say, "Oh, our family clowns on us when we try to reach for help," let's just let me I wanna just, put out a scenario. I probably shouldn't say that for all those that know my family and know who my mom is. Um, I love my mom. Let me just say that first. Like, I love my mom, but I had a mental breakdown in front of her. I got like completely wasted, and that's probably the only way I could cry is when I'm just wasted. And which I don't like, but it just that's how I am. And my mom happened to be there to pick up my sister. And I just started crying my eyes out over, losing my husband and just bawling. And she witnessed it and she was laughing at me. She's like, para de chillar, like, stop crying. And then the next day when I was talking to her, she's like, she's like, why you drink? So you could cry? And I'm just like, really? Like, that just shows that and it's not that it's not her fault. She doesn't understand, but that just shows that like that's the kind of culture that we grow in where you're crying, you can't cry. Stop crying. What are you doing? You're going to drink so you're going to sit over there and cry? Like no. That's just kind of how I mean that's how I got brought up. So crying was a
Yeah,
big no, like tough it up, like just deal with it and move on. And so I just wanted to throw it out there to our audience so that they could like understand that like no, you can't even if you want to, our family, our community, our culture is just kind of like ha ha ha.
well, I mean, there's a lot of that. if I could share a story as well, my grandfather is very strong, proud, Latino man, and I've only seen him cry once, and it was when his best friend had passed. I didn't see him cry when my uncle and my aunt passed away. Those his son and daughter. I didn't see when that happened, but his when his best friend passed, he was sitting there at the table and just sobbing. And I remember being little at the time and wondering like, wow, I never seen my grandpa cry before. And it was briefly though. It was like probably less than a minute. And then he just picked himself up and went outside, went to work in his garden, and that was it. It was like nothing happened. No one talked about it. He's always been a strong presence and voice in our family, and people go to him for guidance, especially in time of like grief. And so he's able to talk to you and stuff like that. He won't, make fun of you, anything like that. But he doesn't show that type of emotion, and I think that's what spreads through my family is that we all try to bottle it up. And like you said, a lot of my family members have a lot of trauma too. So when they get drunk, it comes out, and that's it. And that's when the fireworks start going. And I could never have a family function without something happening. And it is what it is. But that's the problem about not being able to communicate um, through family, our family dynamics, not being able to communicate right, and not allowing people to properly share their grief and understand that it's okay to be feeling like this. We don't have to be picking ourselves up by the bootstraps all the time. It's okay to feel vulnerable, and that's what my family does not like doing. And I know the culture that we live in does not love the feeling of being vulnerable.
And the thing is, sometimes being vulnerable, that's what makes you strong because it gives you the courage to allow others to see your weak moments. And just because you have a weak moment, just because you have a moment of vulnerability, that doesn't make you any less strong. Like, no, that makes you that much stronger to be able to express and show these ugly parts, this pain that you're feeling. And so I think that's where there's like a misconception kind of what defines strength and what defines weakness. And in our culture, and not just in the Latino culture, but I think just in Western culture in general,
Hmm.
that's where we have this view, where this view comes from, unfortunately.
And I only reference Latino culture because that's what I'm familiar with. That's what I grew up in. So it might be a lot of other situations that this happens too, and this is where the empowering movement might come in and play that role and help out. And you realize that we are a lot more similar than we are different, and a lot of people might not understand that because they might never talk to someone. They might never spoke to a Latina before and realize, hey, well, Latinos go through the same thing we go through, or they never talk to someone from a different ethnicity or race, depending on geographically where they live in the country or even in the world. And so, understanding that we have a lot more similarities.
Yeah.
Especially trauma affects everyone and anyone.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are, what you are, it affects you, and it might affect us all differently. But how we deal with it is the hard, it's the question that a lot of people don't know the answer to. How do you deal with it the right way? Because the right way for you might not be the right way for me, or might not be the right way for someone else.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned earlier, is that the only way you could really let your emotions out is that you have to be in a very vulnerable state of being, wasted or intoxicated. And that's really rough. It's hard to get to that point so you can let your emotions out. But
And I'm not saying that's a healthy thing. I'm not.
it's not. I know it's not. I
Yeah,
know it's not healthy.
but I'll just be real.
But
That's how I, unfortunately, that's how I deal with it, and I know so many other people do. But I just want to make sure it's like I'm not promoting people to get completely
mm,
shit faced and make them like no. But I know it happens, and that's the realistic part of this whole thing.
and I want to go back to that too, is because I used to be a substance abuse counselor, and I was for several years, and I know why. I don't know why personally, but I hear why from other people or for the people I worked with of why that happens.
Mm.
Why you have to use substances in order to feel better. And the more people learn about that and learn that they can communicate and have therapy, that they don't have to, they can refrain from substances. Because I'm not saying all alcohol is bad or weed or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to say right now. Is that learning that you don't need that to be okay. You don't need those substances to be able to speak about your emotions and your feelings. But they help. They help get them out there, right?
Well,
But it might not always be in the best way,
and that's
and it could take you down it could take you down a really bad path too. And I've worked with a lot of, um, sadly, I worked with a lot of women that have experienced a lot of trauma, and substances is the only way they're able to function in society, and that's that's really rough to see in people. And
yeah.
but to help them get out of that is where people like you and people like therapists and treatment centers are able to get people to get back to having a sense of normalcy in their life.
Yeah, and you know what? First of all, I just want to say, bless your soul for being a substance abuse counselor. I know that's not. I mean, I didn't do that, but I dealt with someone super close to me who was had a like a drug addiction problem, and during the time that my husband was going through that illness. So I find that that's one of the hardest things, and that people don't talk about too because it's very uncomfortable. But it's a whole, it's just not talking about stuff, not dealing with it does not help. And we live in a society where we're not allowed to really express ourselves in that way. And if we do, we're looked down upon for saying,
Mhm.
hey, um, I feel sad today or something. That's all I could think of. But yeah.
Well, that's where alcohol plays a role, right? That's where people gravitate towards alcohol. That's where people gravitate towards using other substances because that's their therapy. That's their help. That's what gets them, to let their guard down, to be less vulnerable, to deal with life and getting back uh, to normalcy. It's hard. Their normalcy might not be what other people might view it as, and just having some semblance of normal life might be off the table for some people for a while until they're able to be okay with themselves.
Yeah.
And being okay with yourself takes a long time, and it's a journey. And there's a lot of ups and downs, and getting to that place where you're finally okay. What is okay for you? What is okay for someone else? It's a hard question. It's like something that people I don't if someone tells you they know the answer to it, they're bullshitting you.
Yeah.
They are. They're straight up lying to you because they don't know what you're really going through in your life. And to get a quick help or a quick fix it, like one of those type of situations where someone comes in and they try to tell you what to do, or you need to do this or you need to do that, and your life's going to be this much better. That doesn't that's not real.
And
It's a journey.
even just going to therapy, taking medication, and doing all this, even then, like it is,
Yeah.
I realize that going to therapy really is not easy. They're like, oh, you just talk about your emotions. Like, no, they peel every single layer out. And it is so hard to deal with every other layer that comes off. Like, I would come out of sessions like, what the fuck? I did not know that existed. Like, I had no idea I was dealing with the inability to forgive a certain person, and it's like I didn't know I was that mad at them, and I didn't know that's where my anger stemmed from. And sometimes accepting that is a lot harder, um to do sober, and to even deal with sober. And unfortunately, it's so much easier to go to some sort of substance to deal with those emotions that you had been suppressing for such a long time.
Mhm. And yeah, and I have all the empathy uh, for people that deal with substance use disorder, because not only working with it, I have family members that are currently living with substance abuse disorders, but also I have family members that passed away due to that, due to being addicted to whatever substance they were on at that time. And I have nothing against substances, right? They're not the ones I'm angry with or I have an issue with. It's trying to get people to become whole again. And like you said, you could go through therapy and do all that stuff, and it still might not just be enough. That's why it's a long. Everyone finds their way somehow. Uh, You might only need a couple of sessions of therapy to be, oh, I feel good again, and it might work for you. Some people might need years of it in order just to barely crack, just the first layer. It all depends on the individual, and this instead of using substances, what could people, and that's when I start to think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Maybe empowering women is helping people stay away from doing something they shouldn't be doing, and this is like a different path for them. Maybe they don't trust talking to someone else, like therapy. Maybe they just want to be anonymous and let it out there because they need to let it off their chest, and so they need an outlet, and you're providing that outlet for them. And so that's why I feel like this is very special, and it could do a lot of help for many people, and yourself included. You're going to learn a lot over the course of time you're able to do this, and you probably already learned from just a little bit of what you've been sharing on your content. It's to me, I was just like, whoa, it's a lot of it is it's really like traumatic, very very heartfelt, real inspiring stories from regular people to know that it's not a fairy tale all the time, right?
Mhm.
It's not what you see in the movies. It's this real things. Like, you have to get up and go to work. You still got to provide. You still got to pay rent. You still got to pay your mortgage. You still got to take care of your children. Your children might have been really young when it occurred, but to them, it's like you're still their mom. You still have to provide for them. You still have to clothe them. You still have to take them to school, or right now online school. You still have to be that play that role for them. That they need you. They need you to be strong for them, and you're trying to balance that and be strong for yourself.
And there's something when you were mentioning learning experience. There's one thing I have learned that has it's not it's become a little bit of a barrier with empowering women is that I thought people would I mean, I know people want to share, but people are afraid to share. And people are afraid to put themselves out there. But and that's fine, and which is why I tell people, like, if you want to be anonymous, that's fine until you feel comfortable, right? Like, if the person doesn't feel comfortable doing it, I'm not going to push them to do it. But like, it's taken there was one of the videos on Instagram where it took that individual so long to put like the video together, and to to throw it out there and be like, hey, I was sexually assaulted. And that's the thing, like, to have to say these things, it's not easy. And it's like, how can and I just want people to feel comfortable with the community that I'm trying to create for them, where it's okay to say these ugly things that happen in life. Like, it's not pretty. Like, whoever said it was, they're just full of shit. Like, that's not how it works. That's not life. Like, life happens, and shit gets really ugly sometimes.
Well, that's the thing too, is that just because you put it out there in the void doesn't mean that everything is healed and everything's better. And so people are probably learning that, all right, I put it out there, but I got more work to do. Maybe that was the first step for them. Just letting it out and realizing, oh, it felt good. It felt good to talk about that. It felt good to share with individuals I don't know, and for them to have empathy towards my pain and to realize they have similar circumstances as me. Maybe I can do more. Maybe I'm ready to talk to someone. Maybe I'm able to put down all the things that was getting me that wasn't helping, and try something different that makes me feel vulnerable, and maybe I don't ever want to do this, or maybe they get to the point where they realize that's it for me. That's all I wanted to say, and I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to turn the chapter and try something where I can leave that in the past.
And that's the biggest thing about the healing process is one, accepting that you have healing to do, and then two, making the first move towards healing. Just accepting in itself could probably be the hardest part of the whole thing. Just finding it in yourself to say, hey, I have a problem. And by problem, I don't mean like, you know, substance abuse. Like, no, hey, I need healing. That's, I'm avoiding this healing process. That's a problem. Like if you're avoiding any kind of issue, and facing it isn't, um it's not easy, and you don't have to do it alone. And sometimes, you will find that listening or saying things could help somebody else.
That's what it is. It's just learning how to be there for someone without trying to do the most for them, right? Like not trying to fix their trauma, but allowing them, lending them an open hand or open mind or open ear just to listen to what they got to say and really listen to them and pay attention to what because they'll tell you what's wrong. They'll tell you what they need help with, but only if you truly listen to them.
Yeah.
If you go in there with the mindset that you're trying to fix their problems, you're trying to make sure everything's okay all the time, and no, that listen to what the person has to say and allow them to work for themselves, work on themselves, right? You can't fix something for someone. It doesn't work that way. You have to allow that person to be ready, because some people might not be ready. They might not be ready to get to that point of acceptance yet. They're still, they're still at the earliest stages of the grief,
Yeah.
and they're still trying to figure out what's truly going on, and getting to that point of like accepting, all right, this is what happened. This is real, right? This is real. I don't know how else to better explain what to do next. And so for you, when you came to that point of acceptance, what happened after that?
Oh, um, that's it. That's when I decided, like, hey, I need to really let it happen. Like, and by let it happen, I mean I need to just allow myself to not resist going to therapy and not resist refusing to take medications, because we live in a society where taking medication is like, oh, what's wrong with you? You're taking medication, you're crazy. Like, no, I'm not crazy. I just have a lot going on. And that was probably the biggest step. And also with my partner now, allowing myself to truly just open the door and be like, I'm not okay. Because even though I would say that, I would still put up a front and like pull myself together and push on until I literally couldn't anymore. Until I had like some sort of mental breakdown, and I'd let myself go for a little bit, but I was like, I can't do that. I can't afford to do that. I have a child, I have a full-time student. There's like a career I'm trying to chase, and I'm not going to be able to give my family or my career 100% if I'm mentally not okay. If I'm mentally not okay, I cannot give everybody else 100%. And like that's when I said, like, okay, I can't do this on my own. I need help. I started medications, and and it wasn't just like, oh, I realized that I had depression and I started taking medication and going to therapy, because I was already going to therapy. But at the same time, while that was happening, I was also diagnosed with bipolar. And that was a whole other thing. Like I was just like, man, like, can you guys just give me a break? Like, I'm just trying to accept that I have depression right now, and now you're telling me that I might be, I'm bipolar. Like, I have to take another medication to be like, no. But um, when I got to that point, it didn't take long. The second time around, it didn't take long to be like, okay, let me get up and move forward. It took me some time to kind of just process, and now I think that's another learning process of dealing with a trauma, is that I don't know if you could hear the dogs.
It's okay. It's all good.
Like they're going crazy.
It's all good.
It's my neighbors, not mine. And the second one the second time around, it made it that much easier to say, okay, like just give me a minute to process this. And it took me just a few weeks, I want to say, to just be like, okay, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. Like this might be the reason for my emotions. But at the same time, just because you're having roller coaster, like there's all this crap going on in your life, that's not an excuse to blame it to whatever it is that's going on internally. Like I can't say that my behavior is okay because I have bipolar. I'm dealing with bipolar. No, like no. I don't want to say that either. I don't want to say that that's like, oh, that's the reason why. So it's okay for me to behave this way. Like, no. I think when I hit that point too, I was just like, I want to be better. I want to be a better person. And so that's when I'm like, okay, I just felt like I had so much to give, and I needed to put it out there and allow others to also reach out and know that they're not alone, that you know they are loved just as much as any other person. And that's another thing, like sometimes we just don't feel that love from other humans. We become so desensitized that, especially today with all this crap going on,
Yeah.
is just completely insane. And that's another thing about empowering women, and not just women, but I want others to know, like to feel the love. It sounds so hippie, but it's like, no, like I love you. Like I love you as a human, as a person. Like I would never wish anyone any of the stuff I've ever dealt with or any other kind of trauma. But I want others to feel that love, because when we're going through stuff, sometimes we don't feel it. We could feel so lonely. And it's like, no, you're not alone. Like there's people out there that care for you too. It's just you need to be able to say, hey, I need help.
So where can people find Empowering Women?
So if you go on Instagram, and it's Instagram, or yeah, on Instagram. Whoa,
Hmm.
sorry.
It's all good.
On Instagram, just go to empowering women _20, and you'll find everything on there. They could DM me or email me, however, and I could help. There's just a bunch of resources there too, like mental health resources, and there's more to come too. So it's just going to empowering women _20 on Instagram, and you'll find all that there.
They can find your email. They can find resources to mental health. They'll be able to get in contact with you, share their stories. Before we wrap up this show, I want to ask you, like I asked the rest of my guests, someone listening that you probably don't know, or they might know of you a little bit. What do you want them to think about you when they hear the name Anna and they're listening to you on this podcast right now? What do you want the listener to think about you, or how do you want them to view you as?
I want to be seen as someone who accepts you for who you are, loves you for who you are, and is here with open arms, ready to help in any way I could possibly can. That's what I want people to think of when they think of me.
All right. Well, thank you. It was a pleasure having you today on the show and taking time out of your day. And I just want to thank you once again. Like you have a really amazing, inspiring story, and you're doing a lot for many women and men too, as well. Going forward, I know this is something that's going to be powerful, and I can't wait to see how far you take this. You know, directions or whatever it might be. Not only Instagram, I hope you do YouTube. I hope you do Facebook. I hope you one day maybe get your own podcast and try to reach out to as many people, and like you said, show them the love and the support they desperately need. I just want
Yeah,
to say thank you, and
thank
I'm
you.
gonna end the I'm gonna end the recording now. Okay.